Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about the New York team in the season preview, and we start off with the New York Redbulls. And I feel like for the Redbulls, there is definitely a sense of optimism, I would say, about this team coming into this season. And I know that sounds crazy to say to Redbulls fans, because they're probably going to say to me that, well, this is probably going to be a season like any other Red Bull season, where they're going to have a great regular season or maybe a mediocre regular season as they had been in the past, and somehow in some way they still find themselves lose in the first round, which has been the case for the last 4 seasons. And then we have the That's So Metro kind of moment whenever they suffer a heartbreaking playoff loss or an embarrassing playoff loss like they did last year against FC Cincinnati. But when you look at this team, I feel like they're a team that, you know, I know there's a lot of good team in the Eastern Conference. I've said this many times in the season preview about how the East is going to be really strong this season with a lot of stacked team. And, you know, depending on how the playoff format is going to look, we can definitely see some good team in the Eastern Conference that actually might not get to the playoffs. And that if they were in the West, probably they would have done so. And that, you know, as much as there has been a lot of people talking about some of these good Eastern Conference teams, a lot of people talk about the Red Bulls, the one that could be one of those top Eastern Conference team. And I think maybe a lot of that has to do with the fact that, well, it doesn't really matter because they'll still suffer a first round playoff exit. But that being said, in terms of the record, 15-8-11, they finished last season with 53 points. They finished 4th last season, but as I mentioned, as it is the case for the last 4 seasons, they suffer a playoff exit in the first round, this time to FC Cincinnati at home. And then in 2021, they finished in 7th place. And mind you, this was probably the closest the Red Bulls came in terms of ending the longest active playoff streak that any team has had, with them just sneaking into the playoffs as a 7th seed with a 13-9-12 record. And they didn't just sneak into it. They sneaked into it literally on decision day. If they didn't get that 1-1 draw against Nashville SC on decision day, they would have not made it. So they had 48 points that season. But in the first round, they lose to the Philadelphia Union. Wouldn't it be the first time they would suffer a first round exit to the Union in the last 5 seasons? But in 2020, in the shortened COVID season, they finished in 6th place with a 9-5-9 record and finished with 32 points. And they lost to the Columbus Crew in the first round. And I believe that was the first game that Gerhard Stuver was in charge of. And I talked about how that was one of the weirdest kind of appointment to a head coach as the first game you'll ever see. Maybe I would say the craziest too, because you know how there's that old saying, you know, we're gonna throw you right into the deep end on the first day of job. That's what Gerhard Stuver experienced doing his time with the New York Red Bulls. Like, hey, you know, welcome to your new job at the New York Red Bulls. Now you're gonna have to coach this team in the first round of the playoffs. No pressure, you know. You don't have to remember all our playoff fertility we have. We just need you to at least do well enough so that you can beat the Columbus Crew. And obviously that didn't happen with them losing 3-2 in that game. But in 2019, they also finished in 6th place again with a 14-6-14 record and finished with 48 points. But like I said earlier, they also lost to the Philadelphia Union in the first round. I remember that was a crazy game too. Like that was a game where I think the Red Bulls led 3-1 in that one, and then they blew a 3-1 lead and ended up losing 4-3 to the Union in extra time. Just added to the legacy of failure that this team has had and the That's So Metro moment that they've been having for the past 27 season. And then in 2018, or actually the past 26 season, that is. But in 2018, this was by far the best year the Red Bulls had in the last 5 seasons. And at that point, that was actually the record in terms of the best regular season that any team has ever had, with a 22-5-7 record and finished with 71 points, won the Supporters Shield, and even beat Atlanta United to that Supporters Shield, because it was a big race in terms of who was going to win that Supporters Shield race. And while many people thought that Atlanta was going to do it, the Red Bulls were able to beat them in the end. But unfortunately, that didn't lead them to MLS Cup. In fact, Atlanta United definitely didn't like the fact that they had their Supporters Shield stolen from the Red Bulls, that they took revenge on them in the Eastern Conference Final, and they went on to win the whole thing, while the Red Bulls continued to add another year in terms of being one of the few MLS teams that have been in the league since '96 to have yet to win a single MLS Cup. Now, in terms of some of the transfer that they've done, they definitely make some big signings this offseason. Obviously, the biggest signing that they made this offseason, and really the biggest signing in their club history, if you look at the amount of money that they spent, is getting Dante Vanzeir from Belgium and from a well-known club called Union Saint Germain. I think that's it. That name is. It's basically. I'll just use the initial as USG. It's a very team that is very well known in terms of being kind of like the underdog story, kind of like the Leicester City of Europe, a team that just kind of came out of nowhere in Belgium to win the Belgium league, and he was definitely at one of the centerpiece of it. And a lot of people have talked about how he could potentially finally be the replacement that they've been missing since BWP left this team. They also got Corey Burke from the Philadelphia Union, and you know, at first I think that when they announced that Corey Burke was going to be the player that maybe will be the guy that will be playing alongside with Patrick Klimala in that number 9 position, I'm pretty sure Red Bulls fans will be absolutely fuming, because while Corey Burke, he did a good job during his time with the Union, he's kind of more of a guy that is used to just come off the bench and basically continue to punish team, because he's a guy that, as we've seen multiple times last season with the Union, he's a guy that feasts on a tire defender, and I feel like maybe the Red Bulls are going to do the same thing this season, especially, you know, now that they got Dante Vanzeir, the fact that maybe we'll see Corey Burke coming off the bench and try to feast on players that are already tired, and that being a physical player like what Corey Burke is, I won't be surprised we're going to see him have a similar success that he has now with the Red Bulls compared to what we saw in with the Union last season. Then they got Ilian Henok from the Super Draft, and then they bought back Kyle Duncan from his loan in Belgium, and this is a big acquisition, even though, you know, it's not really a signing, but the fact that, you know, I really think they miss Kyle Duncan, especially in that right back position, and getting him back is definitely a huge bonus for this Red Bulls team. Now, in terms of players that is no longer with this team, obviously the biggest exit is Aaron Long, which is not a big surprise, because, as I said before many times, one of the Red Bulls tradition, besides early playoff exit or that so metro moment, is that whoever is the captain of the Red Bulls most likely is going to be out in like 2 or 3 years and join another MLS team. And since Aaron Long was the new captain a couple of years ago, you just had a feeling that he's probably going to be leaving to another MLS team, and that seems like is the case with him going with LAFC, and that's going to be interesting to see who's also going to be the next captain, because I'm assuming it's probably going to be one of the defender, or maybe even their goalkeeper, Carlos Cornell, which means that, yeah, something tells me Carlos Cornell might be gone with this team in a couple of years to join another team. But they also lost Zach Ryan, Jesus Castellanos, Omar Sem, Jay LaCava, who of course was picked up by St. Louis as part of the expansion draft. But obviously, the player that I think every Red Bulls fan are glad the fact that he's no longer with this team is Patrick Klimala. I mean, this was definitely a big discussion throughout this offseason of the fact that, yes, you know, Klimala is sitting on this DP contract, and definitely one of the worst DP contract, I would say, in the league, because of his production that he had last season, and the fact that is Red Bulls thinking about moving on him, or do they have the guts in terms of doing it? Because we've seen before the Red Bulls don't really have the guts to do it, and they did this time. They did move him on move him to Israel and open a DP spot. And then of course they no longer have Caden Clark, who is now with, I believe, with RB Leipzig after his short loan. Well, he sold to RB Leipzig, but then he came back to the New York Red Bulls on a loan deal, but now he's officially an RB Leipzig player. Now, in terms of the strength of this team, I gotta say, when you look at the strength of this team and you look at the starting 11, I think it's pretty much everything. They're very good at the back and very good on the attack and even on the midfield. But I think the biggest weakness I will say about this team, besides the fact that, you know, making past the first round of the playoffs is the biggest weakness of this team, it's got to be the defensive depth. I mean, when you look at that back line, they don't really have a lot of defensive depth, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that Aaron Long is no longer with this team. That's going to be interesting to see, because right now I think they only have like Neelis and Reyes as the two center back, and then they got, I think, one more center back or two more center back. Basically, they have like only 4 center backs on their roster. That is definitely not enough if you want to be a competitive team throughout the season. And not to mention, I will also mention the fact that one of those center back that they had in Andres Reyes, he's been having a lot of injury troubles. I mean, he's been having an injury riddle those season time and time again, and that, yeah, you know, I would say now if he is going to maybe suffer another setback, then there could be some concern in terms of that defense and the depth in terms of the back line that they had. Now, free big question coming into this team besides the defensive depth issue is that will Dante Vinzin finally be the good replacement for BWP? So, of course, for a long time, this team has tried their best in terms of replacing Bradley Wright Phillips, and it feels like all the options that they have tried have not worked whatsoever. I mean, the closest I would say might be Brian White trying to replace BWP, and I thought Brian White was good during his time with the Red Bulls, and then they inexplicably decided to sell him to the Vancouver Whitecaps, and yeah, they still have not found a good replacement ever since that. But there's definitely a case that he could be the guy to do well. I mean, there's also a case that maybe Elias Manuel might be another guy that could be a good replacement for BWP, but you know, I feel like you know, he's a decent player, but he might not be at the level as what the hype surround with Dante Vinzin. And I think the Red Bulls are hoping that is the case, because after all, they spent a lot of money to get him. I mean, I've heard it was like a club record transfer fee that they of course sent him. They better hope that he turns out, because if it doesn't pan out and it's gonna be like another Patrick Klamala, yeah, this is gonna be another setback in terms of them finally finding a good number 9 that they lost in BWP back in 2018. And then the second big question of this team is the fact that is this actually perhaps the strongest Red Bulls team we have seen since 2018 when they won the Supporters Shield, and we talked about that was a really good team. I mean, I remember that was the team that had the likes of Tyler Adams, BWP, Luis Robles, and all those guys that were on that team. And that, you know, that team also was the team that I think, you know, as much as I know a lot of people were talking about Atlanta United being that team in 2018 to win the league, a lot of people were kind of underrating the Red Bulls that season, and they kind of proved that by winning the Supporters Shield, and with the way that how strong they were, it looked like they finally would broke the curse in terms of finally winning the first MLS Cup. Now, that obviously didn't happen, but ever since, I would say that since 2018 and since that team, none of the Red Bulls team I've seen in the past 4 seasons has came even close to being as good as that team. But I feel like this one might be the closest, if not match the quality of it. Because when you look at this team, again, looking at the starting 11, this is a very, very, very good team. And I feel like people are not giving enough appreciation of how they can definitely finish in the top 4 in the regular season. When you look at in the goalkeeping position, Carlos Cornell started to establish himself to be a very decent goalkeeper. And although I wouldn't say that he would be as good as Luis Robles, because, you know, Luis Robles will always consider one of the best goalkeeper in league history. He's definitely been very, very good, and been even maybe in the fringe of discussion as the goalkeeper of the year in this league. And then when you look at the back line, besides the defensive back issue, I mean, they have 2 good fullbacks in Duncan Token, and assuming if Reyes is going to stay healthy and he's gonna continue to show the quality that he has, it could be a decent partnership with Neelis. And then of course, when you look at the midfield too, Christian Castries Jr., he's definitely looking to trying to impress again, especially the fact that this is his contract year. And then going forward on the attacking end, I mean, you know, they have one of the most dangerous winger in Lewis Morgan, and then mention about Dante Vinzin. If he turns out to be decent, then yeah, this could be a really dangerous team, and a team that, you know, again, I feel like as much as I know there's a lot of hype surrounding the other Eastern Conference team like Orlando and the Philadelphia Union, a lot of people realize the Red Bulls are they could definitely be sneaking in that conversation and could be that top 4 team. And then finally, the third big question, and this has been a big question for them for so many years now, is this finally the year that they win a playoff game? It's hard to believe that this team have not won a playoff game since 2018, but yeah, here we are. They lost the playoff game in the first round 4 straight season, and I feel like this could be the year that they finally win one. Though again, It all depends on, you know, I know winning a playoff game would be nice for Red Bulls fan, but if you ask any Red Bulls fans that's been truly supporting this team for a long time, winning a playoff game is not good enough. Like, simply, they need to go deep in the playoffs, or even winning the whole thing too, because, you know, as long as they don't have these deep playoff run or continue to have these heartbreaking moments, we're going to have the traditional That's So Metro moment that's going to happen with this team throughout the end of the season. Now, the bonus question of this team is, what kind of crazy formation will this team, of course, run with? Now, I have heard that they are looking to trying to run the crazy formation of the 4-2-2-2, and that's a formation that I think Jesse Marsch used to run for this Red Bulls team. And while, you know, well, when you look at in the league and how I don't think a lot of team has ever run that formation before, and for good reason, because that formation never tend to work out. I think Jesse Marsch at least did his best in terms of running that formation and actually find some success in terms of doing it. And when you also look at this team, it kind of makes sense why they would want to run that formation too, because, you know, when you plug all the players in that formation, it makes perfect sense. So we'll see whether or not if they do run for that formation. But either way, we know this is a team that likes to press, and we're going to continue to see that for this upcoming season. And I also won't be surprised this could be a good road team again, because this is a team that thrives when they don't have possession, and that when you are a team that thrives without possession, you tend to do better when you're on the road, because when you're on the road, at least in terms of how traditional MLS team do it whenever they go on the road, they're not going to have as much possession and not going to dictate games as they are when they're playing at home. So I think that kind of explains why the Red Bulls were so good on the road last season. They're a team that likes to not have possession, likes to counter press or even press their opponent, and I expect that's going to be the same thing this season. But again, rolling this crazy formation, a formation that hasn't really had any success besides when Jesse Marsch was coaching this team about 5 or 6 years ago. It's going to be interesting to see how this is going to look. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video. And if you're a Red Bulls fan, what do you think is the strength, the weakness, and 3 big questions facing this team for this upcoming season. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.